My name is Amanda Shaw, and I'm honored to deliver this vision statement to you and to contribute to this very important discussion on gender and economic equity at the Global Table on Women's Economic Empowerment. What I want to talk to you today about are some of the issues we're facing as part of the COVID-19 crisis and some of the ways that women are leading. And we are leading in part often from the sidelines, as we're noticing that women are not at the table when important decisions affecting all of our lives are being made. I'd like to share an approach and a vision which builds on work which has come before, but that I hope will also provide some food for thought for other groups of women leaders in other contexts. On April 23, 2020, the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women published an economic recovery plan that highlighted the needs of women, girls, and those who identify as non-binary. This was the first plan drafted by an official U.S. state agency to explicitly articulate a feminist vision for a post-COVID-19 recovery. This plan was made possible by the collaborative leadership of the state CSW and the incredible and voluntary work of a group of about 30 women's rights advocates. I have been privileged and honored to meet weekly with these advocates to discuss the ways the crisis is impacting women in their multiple roles as caregivers, workers, and citizens. I work as an advocate on issues of gender and sustainable development internationally and here in Hawaii, and today I want to share with you a little bit about this work and how it fits into action around SDG 5 and the SDGs more broadly. Daily, we are witnessing economic fallout and devastation here. While we have the fewest COVID-19 cases in the U.S., we have the worst economic outcomes due to our overdependence on tourism. These economic shocks and loss of employment have been characterized often as an economic shutdown, but it's important to recognize that some aspects of our economy are actually in overdrive. If one recalls the definition of the word economy, it means to manage the household. And this helps to bring into focus that women in our communities have never been busier taking care of loved ones, provisioning supplies, and finding ways to offset the enormous economic and social burdens of this time. These aspects of the economy usually go uncounted and hidden, and yet there would be no economy without them. Our plan, Building Bridges, Not Walking on Backs, a feminist economic recovery plan for COVID-19, is both practical and aspirational. It outlines concrete ways to spend stimulus funds while also pointing towards ways we can be structurally transformative. What we highlighted is also being echoed by articles and reports from around the world about the impact of COVID-19 on women, on healthcare workers, and on caregiving. The plan calls for feminist leadership and consultation of women, as well as the publication of disaggregated intersectional data on COVID-19 cases, fully incorporating gender-based violence prevention in the immediate response and long-term recovery, harnessing the role of midwifery to improve deficits in maternal and neonatal health care, especially in rural areas, redressing critical economic inequalities to promote women's financial independence, building the state's social infrastructure, childcare, education, and healthcare, as this is more effective in growing the economy than a focus on hard infrastructure alone, reorienting our economies away from the military, tourism, and luxury development, and avoiding austerity at all costs, as this will exacerbate the recession. We place special focus on Native Hawaiian and immigrant women because we know that structural racism means that they are hit hardest by the crisis. We made the radical suggestion that stimulus funds for Hawaii should be reaching Native Hawaiians, the indigenous people whose land has been illegally occupied by the United States. We argue that the state should follow its own laws and ensure that 20% of all funds are channeled to Native Hawaiians. There's been a wave of interest in the plan from national press, international networks, and other states wishing to replicate it. Our own congressional representative hosted a town hall on women's issues related to the plan. It's being taught in the university, informing the work of other state agencies, and shaping conversations in national health networks. This interest shows us that there is significant appetite for moving beyond business as usual and towards building bridges of structural transformation. But alongside desire for change in our communities, we are also witnessing the active deployment of denial in the form of silence from local leaders and press. Women and women's rights advocates, let alone folks who identify as trans, non-binary, and other identities, are shut out of decision-making on the economic recovery process. Next week, we expect state budget cuts of anywhere from 15 to 20% across the board, including to the social services we need now more than ever. This story is probably hardly unfamiliar to many of you. You're probably also witnessing varying forms of denial in your own contexts. For us, the lack of engagement at the policy level speaks to the wider challenges facing feminist movements as we struggle to make our voices heard. And when we are faced with this silence, we know we are facing power. And this brings me to the pathways laid out in the SDGs as collective global commitments and to the need to galvanize action to achieve them in the coming decade. The G20, as a group of the most powerful, represents a critical space to advance action and leverage resources for change. In her paper, The SDGs and Feminist Movement Building, Geeta Sen reminds us that feminist movement building is not a simple volitional act, but is enmeshed in the fluxes and changes of its external environment and institutions. And as she says, feminist movements are no stranger to adverse economic, social, and political environments. When we look at feminist organizing around the SDGs, we are also reminded of the cautions laid out in the 2013 bond statement of the Women's Major Group. We do not want to be mainstreamed into a polluted stream. We call for deep and structural changes to existing global systems of power, decision-making, and resource sharing. This includes enacting policies that recognize and redistribute the unequal and unfair burdens of women and girls in sustaining societal well-being and economies, intensified in times of economic and social crises. Some days, it feels that the stream is not only polluted, but also running dry. And yet what I think this state reminds us is that there is a need for structural transformation, as well as a fierce determination that feminist movements have, which also provide the lifeblood of innovation for gender equality efforts. The by now foundational paper of S. Laura Weldon and Malahatan in 2013 also highlighted this and revealed that the most important and consistent factor in driving the implementation of laws on violence against women is feminist activism. As we work hard at national and regional levels to hone in on closing the gaps SDG 5 and others aim to fill, and as we respond to the serious challenges of COVID-19, we will need strong and well-resourced feminist movements, and we will need them to make a racket in advocating for women's leadership every step of the way. We will face silence, but we will also build power. And as Audre Lorde said, your silence will not protect you. For every real word spoken, she writes, I had made contact with other women, while we examined the words to fit in a world in which we all believed, bridging our differences. And as it was the concern and caring of all those women which gave me strength and enabled me to scrutinize the essentials of my living. Thank you.